right, so it's 1 o'clock and I think we'll get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen Reed and I am a research coordinator at the National Collaborating Center for Methods and Tools. We are very pleased today to bring you the next installment of our Spotlight on Methods and Tools webinar series. And a big thank you and a warm welcome to those who have joined us this afternoon. Today we will be featuring the self-evaluation tool for action in partnership. So before we get started, I would like to just quickly review a few housekeeping items. Please use the chat section on the bottom right-hand side of your screen in WebEx to post any comments or questions you have during the webinar. We will have a designated open Q&A session at the end of our presentations today, but we do encourage you to feel free to post any questions or comments you have throughout our presentations. Also, please make sure to post your comments in the chat section to all participants so that everybody can see your question, as other participants may have similar or the same questions as you. So for today, we also recommend using a wired internet connection as opposed to a wireless connection. If you are having any connection issues, there is a 24/7 WebEx helpline that you can access. The number for that support is on this slide and will also be posted in the chat section. We also have Kate Turner, who is a research assistant at the NPCMT, available to assist you with any technical issues that you have, so please feel free to send a message to Kate through the chat box if you require assistance. So after today, the PowerPoint presentation for this webinar will be made available in both English and French. The English audio recording will also be made available on our YouTube channel, and the French recording, which is happening tomorrow, will also be available on our YouTube channel about a week or two after the end of this webinar. So these resources can be accessed using the link that is posted in the chat section. And as I said, we will try to have these posted within about a week or two of today's presentation. So before we get started, we do have a quick polling question that we'd like to ask. So we'd just like to get a sense of the audience that's joining us today. So we're wondering how many people are watching today's session with you. Please let us know if you are joining by yourself, if there are several of your colleagues joining with you, or if you're joining today in a larger group. And you can answer this polling question in the panel located on the right-hand side of WebEx. And just please remember to hit the submit button after you've selected your response. So I will just give people a few moments to answer before we move on. But so far it looks like most people are joining today with themselves. And as well, we do have a few that are also joining in a smaller group of 2 to 3. So that's really great to see. Thank you. All right, so I would like to officially welcome everyone to the NPCMT Spotlight on Methods and Tools webinar series. As I mentioned, today we will be featuring the self-evaluation tool for action in partnership. And we will post the link to our summary statement for this tool in the chat section. And we'll continue to post relevant links that come up through the presentation for you to access directly in that chat section. So today's webinar will include a presentation from the developers of this partnership tool, as well as from an individual or group who has used this tool in their own practice and has joined us today to share their experience in using the tool. So for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the National Collaborating Center for Methods and Tools, we are one of 6 national collaborating centers across Canada funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada. We here at the NPCMT are located at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario, while the other national collaborating centers focus on the use of evidence in specific public health content areas. We here at the NPCMT focus on improving access to and use of methods and tools for evidence-informed decision-making and knowledge translation across all areas of public health practice in Canada. So the NPCMT offers many different products and services that are available through our website, a few of which are listed here on this slide. Many of you may be familiar with some of these, and so today we will be highlighting a tool that is located in our registry of methods and tools. But I'd also like to note that the NPCMT offers a variety of online learning opportunities as well through our Learning Center. So we have one more polling question that's come up. So we're wondering how many of you today are familiar with the tool that we will be discussing. So either you're not familiar with the tool at all, you've heard of it before, or you've actually had a chance to use it in your own practice. So again, once you've selected your response, please make sure to hit the submit button at the bottom right-hand side of the panel. Wonderful. So great. As responses do come in, I am seeing that most people aren't very familiar or have heard of the method or tool, but nobody so far in today's group has actually had a chance to use it. So I think that this will be a great opportunity to learn more about how to use this in your own work.
Excuse me.
So now I would like to formally introduce our first presenters for today. So today we have joining us Angèle Bilodeau is a full professor and researcher in the School of Public Health at the University of Montreal and the lead author of the original French tool that's being presented today. And Jillian Cranias is a bilingual health promotion consultant at Health Nexus and has played a very large role in helping to translate the tool as well. So thank you very much, Angèle and Jillian, for joining us today. It's really an honor to have you here presenting and sharing your work. And with that, I will pass the presentation along to you.
Hello, everybody. I am happy to speak to you today and to share this tool with you. And first, Gillian will continue with the opening of the session, and I will continue after with the overview of the tool.
Thanks. Okay, hi everyone, this is Jillian, and I am here in Montreal with Angèle, so we're co-presenting together, which is wonderful. I know some of you who are on the line from our work in Ontario, and let me just introduce for a minute a bit about Health Nexus and my work. I have 20 years of experience supporting partnerships at community health centers, and then from my position at Health Nexus around Ontario and now across Canada. And Health Nexus is a bilingual organization very much inspired by the Ottawa Charter for Health Promotion, which is sort of what brought me to Health Nexus, that inspiration. And our work is focused on community engagement, partnership development, and healthy child development. On a day-to-day basis, we work with professionals, organizations, and community networks to create healthy and equitable communities. And our work is really about mobilizing knowledge and mobilizing partnerships to improve outcomes for real people in communities. So this work that I started doing with Angèle is fairly recent with Angèle. So I do want to clarify that I was not involved in the development of this tool in its original French version. And then it was actually a colleague of mine at Peterborough Health Unit had sent me an article in French that had the word partenariat and évaluation in the title. And we'll be actually sharing that article later on. And she sent me an email and said, Jillian, can you tell me what this is about? And it was from the Canadian Journal of Program Evaluation, Canadian Journal of Evaluation. So I took a look at it, and it was a case study of having used the tool. Then I went and looked at the tool, looked at the articles related to the tool, and we became very excited because it was very much aligned with our work around collaborative and inclusive partnerships. So that was a couple of years ago. But then we came to use the tool in the context of needing a bilingual tool. Oh yeah, I better move forward our slides here. Oh, sorry, I have to pause for a technical question. Am I able to move? Here I go. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to introduce a tool to you now, and then we later became, in the context of a project, got involved in translating into English, and now sharing it with some fabulous people across English Canada. Thank you for being with us today. So the tool, as I mentioned, was developed by Angèle, and it's based on her extensive research and collaboration. She did this, it was collaboratively published with leading community organizations and public health practitioners in Quebec. Just to let you know what's forthcoming today, we will be sharing, and you'll be able to get to know the tool, which, as we understand, most of you are not yet familiar with. And also, Angèle is very special today because she will be sharing with us more of the theory behind the tool based on her research that informed the tool. So I believe if Kirsten or Kate are able to just put into the chat box now, we have the link to the English tool, which you may want to open up, or you may have already taken a brief look at it before. I'm going to change slides.
Yeah. And now this slide presents an overview of the tool. 4 points to say that this tool comes from a mid-range theory that defines 6 requirements for effective partnership. And the tool comes from a series of case studies based on actor network theory. In your chat box, you have a chapter from Louise Potvin and Carole Clavier that explain what is actor network theory. It is a French sociologist theory. The tool makes it possible to assess the functioning of a partnership, identifying both difficulties and aspects which work well, with reference to the 6 requirements from the theory. The tool includes 18 items, excuse my English, related to these requirements. So it's a collective self-evaluation tool, allowing practitioners to situate their own partnership according to 3 levels of achievement for each requirement, or for each of the 18 items. And this tool helps to make a judgment founded on evidence-informed best practices. And for this tool to work properly, the partnership should have 2 conditions: be more than a place of information sharing and networking, and to be a venue for collaborative work on a specific project with resources. And now the first slide is talking about the validation of the original French tool. So when we built this tool, we made 2 versions. The first one was a Likert scale, you know, from little to very much. And we tested it with 15 partnerships, and we saw that Likert scale was not an appropriate solution to measure what we try to measure. And the second version, we changed for 3 option responses for each item, from strongest to weakest, and it helps to situate themselves for each partnership. So we tested it with 28 partnerships, and this version met the validity criteria you have on the slide. So I will just read them. Works properly for partnership engaged in collective action, allows for a good convergence between respondents within the same partnership, and distinguishes between partnerships with better and worse scores, and helps identify areas of difficulty.
Okay, now we're going to pause a bit to share with you the methodology of how we translated and adapted the tool from the original French into English. Just a note of appreciation, this translation work was realized within the context of a project at Health Nexus that is funded by the Department for Women and Gender Equality, which, by the way, is the new name for Status of Women Canada, which is now a ministry. And at Health Nexus, we needed a bilingual tool, so we were needing an English version of a tool for conducting what is a bilingual evaluation project. And Julia will share more about that project work later in the latter part of the webinar. And just briefly, I just want to comment as well that for us, this tool, I mean, it was Canadian. A lot of the other tools in evaluating partnership are coming from elsewhere, like Australia or from the US. So it was relevant for us in that context. And also, it was manageable from a practice side because we really work on the ground with partnerships and know how little time and resources they have for evaluation. And so the fact that it's 6 requirements and 18 items, it's very manageable. It focuses, as you're going to learn, it really focuses on the key requirements that then can often be missed, that are essential to getting the benefit of what partnership's supposed to be about. So in terms of the method, when we went about translating it, Angèle put together the method based on best practices. She did a literature review for that. And then this is the method that we followed. So it began with a parallel double translation by 2 different translators, translating it from French to English. And then we had an expert committee that was composed of professionals who are bilingual, academics and practitioners, as well as those 2 translators and Angèle, and we all sat together, and from those 2 translations, we created one test version of the English tool. And second, that tool was pre-tested with in a focus group method with a variety of users from different target groups, all of them from the Greater Toronto area, but a real range from community volunteers to community organizations, service providers, and public health people. In the chat box is the reference for what is a forthcoming article about the process of evaluating, of translating the tool, and it also contains some of the theoretical pieces, like just some short references. So once this comes out, it will be very useful for those of us working in English Canada in terms of having something to go along with the tool itself, understanding the background. Okay. So I'm going to now take us through some parts which are in the tool itself, but we just want to use this as a way to move you into getting to know the tool. There's 3 different options for performing a collective evaluation that are mentioned in the tool. The first is conducting group discussion. The second is to people conduct it individually and then bring their own notes to talk as a group. And the third option is to actually have people conduct more of an anonymous kind of completion and then to gather those responses together and bring them the aggregated data as a basis for a group discussion. And today you're going to hear about another way of using the tool in a collective evaluation. So I think there's a lot of ways you can use this tool once you get to know it, and that's wonderful. And it's really exciting to get to know the evidence base and really the learnings behind this tool. So in the chat box, I think, I asked Kirsten and Kate to just put in my email. It so happens that we did develop a small Excel document to allow us to crunch the numbers on up to 30 respondents. So it's not online, it's not published, but if anyone wants to use the tool in the number 3 option here, I'd be happy to share that Excel, and that could just save you some time when you're crunching your numbers. So then this is also outlined in the intro page of the tool. There are 3 types of partnership evaluation that you can use this for. You can use it for one-time evaluation. You can use it for longitudinal over time, and you can also use it across partnerships as a summary portrait. What's great in the number 3 area, I mean, certainly for us, I think we'd mostly be using it as one-time or longitudinal, but anyone who's sitting in a position of being a funder or who's working with partnerships that are working under the same public policy or in relation to the same kind of mandate, this can be a valuable way to look at what's happening across partnerships. So if more than one partnership is experiencing difficulties with a similar requirement or a similar item in the tool, then that can highlight collective issues perhaps in the way things are being funded or in the way a policy has been written. Okay, so that's enough about the tool details, how to use it. We're now going to pass back to Angèle. Everybody pay attention. This is the exciting part. She's going to share us her research and theoretical foundations behind the tool.
It is the most complex part of the webinar.
And Angèle is like, you know, we are so thankful that you're doing this in English with us today, Angèle. But she did say to me yesterday, she said, but this is my stuff that I know inside out. So this is the easiest part, believe it or not, for her to present in English.
Yeah, so we are looking at the theoretical foundations of the tool. From our studies, we find that there is two main mechanisms for the efficacy of a partnership: participation dynamics and partnership arrangements. These two main mechanisms explain the quality of action. Quality of action is seen here as a dependent variable. So I will present 3 points of the quality of action. I will be back with the two main mechanisms after. So these 3 points of quality of action are partnership attraction. That's the ability to maintain and extend the network of actors involved in the project. Second point, anchoring of the collaborative project in its environment means its relevance to the actors, and here we talk about all actors, not only these in the partnership, and its appropriateness to the context and the identified problem. And the last one, project viability, is the potential of the partnership solution to transform the identified situation in the desired direction. And so the 6 requirements come from the two main mechanisms. The first one is participation dynamics. That's what set actors into motion to address a situation that is deemed problematic. This includes not only articulation of the problem and the option for action, but also information on the actors concerned. That's social position, interest in the issue that connect them. Also, partnership will be more successful if it identifies the convergence between actors and the main controversies that divide them. Such controversies are usually linked to question of power or paradigms for action. A well-defined problematization seeks to identify possible points toward which actor can find an interest in converging. And that's an important point. Access to and sharing of information are the active element through which participation contributes to the quality of action in partnership. These activities widen the possibility of convergence among actors. And the second main mechanism is partnership arrangement, that are structure and mechanisms that build cooperation. Cooperation is built by enhancing points of convergence and by solving controversies which prevent actors from cooperating. So now Gillian will continue with explaining more in detail these two main mechanisms, and she will show how they are measured in the tool.
Hi. Okay, so now these 4 points, and there's 2 more on the next slide, they are coming directly from the tool itself. These are the 6 requirements. And so I'm just going to present these first 4 requirements, which are related to the participation dynamics that Angel spoke about. So the first one is looking at the question, who participates? Partnerships must include the various perspectives on the issue of interest in order to broaden opportunities for the convergence among those actors and to enable successful action. Number 2, at which stage do these actors participate? Partners need to be actively involved in analyzing issues and developing options for action and not just in implementation. Number 3, who controls the decisions? And here partners need to be engaged to agree that goes beyond consultation, and they must be in a position to influence decisions. And number 4, are the necessary actors mobilized? And those actors include key actors, who are those without whom the action cannot be achieved, and also strategic actors, who are those required to secure the involvement of the other key actors. Partnership members must be in a position to make decisions and commit resources, so those people who are around the table can't just represent an organization, which would be a key actor, but they also have to be able to have access to that decision-making and resources of that organization. And overall, the essential resources for successful action must be mobilized. Furthermore, partners must be stable, while also the partnership must be able to bring in new stakeholders as needed to move the action forward together. So those are the first 4 of the 6 requirements, and here are the next 2, and they are aligned with the mechanisms for partnership arrangements. We have a little bit more to share with you here because we have some examples to really illustrate them out. So number 5 is about favorable arrangements and structures and mechanisms that reduce subordination that results from structural inequity among actors. So in order for new solutions to emerge, actors must be able to modify their social relations and their rules. So for example, to shift from subcontracting to negotiating action together. And with the equalization of power relationships, actors can combine their knowledge, their practices, and their resources in new ways to produce more appropriate options for our action. When this requirement is met, number 5, all actors can identify concrete signs of their influence and interdependence, such as the equitable acknowledgement and distribution of benefits from the partnership, equal consideration of all points of view in discussions and decision-making, and negotiated criteria and procedures for accountability. So those last 3 examples I gave you show up in the tool as the items. So if you remember, there's 6 requirements and there's 18 items. So these ones you will see when you look at the tool are there as what gets evaluated by the partners. Just to share in a situation where partnerships do not meet this requirement, number 5, partnerships which are not representative of the actors connected to the issue, which predetermine the structures and roles of actors, and within which control over decision-making is made by one or a few actors in positions of power, are associated with a lower quality of action. In such partnerships within which one or more actors are unable to position themselves to contribute their knowledge and assets, the project is deprived of ideas and resources, and it experiences a restricted scope of possibilities for action. And just a final note on this requirement, actors with more assets, so those who have more structural power and assets, are not required to mobilize all of them all the time. Although this may serve their corporate and organizational interests, if it doesn't serve the common interest, it can lessen the space in the partnership for the engagement of other actors, and it can reduce the quality of action. Within such a transformation of power relationships as identified by this requirement number 5, partnership processes, let me backtrack there. without such a transformation of power relations. So when we have these conditions not being met, the partnership processes perpetuate previous action reasoning. And I would expect that among you listening, you have lots of experience of this, because it's not an easy thing to move this stuff forward. And that is that the work can often remain siloed and or be the extension of the reasoning of the actor and actors with the initial power base in the partnership. Once again, this is why I love this tool, is because it helps illuminate for us a pathway towards having more effective partnerships. So in the chat box, we asked Kirsten here to put in an article which is done by some colleagues of ours in Toronto from St. Michael's Hospital, and it gives an example. It actually is a bunch of case studies internationally, but looks at how stakeholders are brought together and really looks at the partnership arrangements and how that impacts the community groups who engage in partnership. Number 6, finally, the final requirement talks about arrangements that support the collective construction or the co-construction of action. And these are processes that strengthen convergences among actors and that support the resolution of controversies that would diminish cooperation. When actors can concretely identify progress in thinking and action that derives directly from the synergy among the different partners' knowledge and assets, this is what it looks like when that requirement is being met. And such synergy goes beyond the coordination of efforts towards transforming actors' ways of intervening to more fully address complex situations. It is the combining together of actors' paradigms for action that generates the added value of working in partnership. And finally, a quick example. On the other hand, when partnerships do not meet this condition of collective action, when one or few actors in a position of power enforce a dominant paradigm for action for how things should happen, or differing paradigms are juxtaposed against each other, creating heightened conflict, this leads to a loss of quality of the action in partnership. So thank you for hanging in there with those examples, which I will say came from Angèle, but I was sharing them.
Yeah.
We're going to pass it back to Angèle now, and she's going to be sharing the key concepts, again, that emerge from that theoretical framework.
To help you to catch the main concept of this theory, the 4 next slide are a reminder of central concept. So the first one is active ingredients of participation. It is what we call sometimes the baking powder of participation. And so I repeat that access to and information sharing are the active element through which participation contributes to the quality of action. And it is not only the access, but it is mainly the sharing, and the sharing of new information too. So this makes it possible to widen the possibilities of convergence among actors. Next main concept to remember is equalization of power. Gillian has talked about that. And so equalization of power among actors means establishing structures and mechanisms aimed at reducing the subordination that result from structural inequality among actors. Actors can identify concrete indicators of their influence and interdependence. Equalization of power is necessary for to combine knowledge and practice and resources among actors. The third one main concept is the co-construction of action. So collective construction of action is accomplished by combining knowledge asset of actors. It is not just superposing, it is combining. The combination of actors' paradigms for action generate the added value of working in partnership. Here we have to distinguish between coordination and co-construction. It is not the same thing. Collective construction of action is noticeable when change in thinking and action is a direct result of combining the knowledge and assets of the partners. And the last one, this slide focuses on controversies. The collective construction of action is accomplished by, first, reinforcement of convergence, naturally the actors, but also the resolution of controversies that prevent them from cooperating. So to resolve controversies, we need to do some points. First, deliberation and the clarification and confrontation of position. Addition of actors introducing new knowledge and resources. Reinforcement of certain links and abandonment of others. That means that some new actors can engage and some other can be retired. And the development of new, most robust options for action that facilitate cooperation. And now we will continue with Gillian to look at the tool more focus.
Yeah. Okay, so what we have on the screen here is just a clip of the first 2 questions in the tool. So these are there are 18 items that together measure the 6 conditions. And as Angèle had mentioned earlier, when they were doing the work to validate the tool, their research results showed that this, giving very concrete examples and asking people to choose one of 3 was more effective representation of the situation of that partnership than just using a Likert scale, you know, 1 to 3 or 1 to 5. So I found that very interesting, and I keep it in mind now when I'm working with Likert scales. Not that I don't use them, but that I realize there are limitations, and so it's fascinating to see that, and that when you use these concrete examples, it's a way to avoid some of that lack of clarity. And as you can probably already appreciate, some of these items reflecting some of the conditions, some of them are very familiar to us and to our culture, you know, of our work culture, and some of them not so much. So that is really, I think, where having the really concrete, specific examples of what does it look like when it's happening, or what might it look like when it's happening sometimes or a little bit, and what does it look like when it's not happening at all. That's the value of this. So we're going to go now very rapidly through, again, they're arranged according to the 6 conditions, but we are touching on just to show you all of the 18 items that are in the tool. But reminding you again that for each of these, so the ones that are up here now, number 1 and number 2, there's actually 3 different statements about that people select from among those 3 statements. So, and in the interest of time, I'm going to move quite quickly here, but feel free, you know, when we get to the discussion part, which is really going to be really important, is take note of any that you would like to comment on or ask questions or clarify about. So these are the 2 which are related to the first requirement of the range of perspectives and who's around the table. This next one speaks to the piece about when are stakeholders getting involved in those decisions which are strategic decisions, right? This third one about the engagement of stakeholders in negotiating decisions and in influencing decisions. And I just want to point out here what, you know, I'm sharing with you some of the history of my dialogues with Angèle as I've gotten to know the work. Is that, you know, I remember asking her once, well, why is there only 1 item under? There's 18 items, right? There's 6 requirements. There could have been 3 items per requirement, but this is really reflecting on what came out in the research, that this is the question we need to be asking ourselves if we want to ensure that that requirement number 3 is met. And again, I think this probably reflecting on your experiences, you may notice that it's community groups who are often left out of that, negotiating and influencing, or they just don't have the resources to be there. They're there sometimes, but not there enough. And so this is, I can see here why that is such a key question for a group to consider. So now we get to number 4, and you see four items coming up in relation to this. And so these are items when they follow in order in the questionnaire, that's number 5, 9, 10, and 11. So in the questionnaire, the items are coming up in a more random way. Number 5, how the partnership arrangements favor the equalization of power among stakeholders. And when Julia speaks later, I know she'll be speaking a lot to this area because it's a big focus of our work at Health Nexus. And there's 4 items that we reflect on there. And number 16 is an interesting one because when we were testing the tool and we were in a, Toronto-based, Southern Ontario-based environment, we were asking them, was it translated well? Did it make sense? But people were saying, well, this never happens. And Angèle, though, I mean, it does happen very seldom, but it does, when it does happen, this is what you found as being effective in terms of partnerships being able to deliver on what they're trying to do. So, so it's a really key one to be asking ourselves. You're getting a lot of my commentary here as we go through. Remember, I'm not the researcher behind this. Number 6, finally, has 6 items related to it. But of course, in my mind, again, here I see this is collective action. This is partnership. This is not what we've normally been funded to do. And so here are 6 areas to really tend to and talk about among partners and actors to identify how well we're doing in our partnership work. And finally, we just want to share one example of results obtained with the tool. And there's going to be a link going into the chat box here because this is based on the work of Bernard Simon Leclerc. And this is, in fact, that article through which I first heard about the tool. So very quickly, you see some results here from people completing the tool and then the results being combined. So on the top level, you have strong results in terms of how that partnerships are doing, in terms of all points of view being given in consideration, in terms of acknowledging everyone's part in carrying out activities. And then in the bottom, we have less strong results. I'm going to ask you to look at the right bottom first, where you see a weak result. So the criteria and mechanisms for accountability are negotiated. So based on what we just talked about, that wasn't a surprising one there. The weakness being showing up there on the left where it says faible, which is weak. And then in the bottom left, what you see is an experience of non-convergence in the results. And so there's something really, as Julia and you're going to hear more from Julia about qualitative work, I would very much encourage, this is a place now where we need to go deeper and ask questions about why. Why is there that convergence among the partners, and how can partners dialogue among themselves to understand what's going on and look for ways to work together towards more effective partnership action. And so as we wrap up, I just wanted to share with you that, as I mentioned at the beginning, Health Nexus, we do work supporting partnerships, and we do have some great tools which are available in English and French, 2 of those being related to reflection, just having reflective dialogues. So the tool that's being listed there is called the Power of Reflection, and it presents really simple participatory evaluation techniques that you can use in a 15-minute or 1-hour conversation among partners to look more deeply into some of the results that you get when you use the questionnaire. And now we're going to pass it on to Julia, who's going to give us much more depth of that kind of approach with the tool. Did you want to add something?
Hello. Well, hi, everyone. This is Julia here. Thank you for having me here this webinar, and I've been privileged to support Health Nexus as a researcher and evaluator, and I've been working with my colleagues from Health Nexus, including Gillian, To adapt the original questionnaire tool developed by Angèle and her team, to adapt the tool for the use in the context of partnership work for system change, and more specifically for partnership support, for partnership projects that address gender equity with focus on women's participation in political action. The adapted tool was applied with 5 partnership projects that involve various numbers of participating organizations and agencies, varying from, some partnerships, involving only 2 partnering organizations to one of the largest partnership involves 6 partnering organizations. And we used the adaptation of the tool to evaluate effective and equitable action in partnership. So first, before introducing the actual tool, I would like to explain what are the guiding reasons for the adaptation. And one of the main reasons for the adaptation was to ensure the appropriateness of the tool to the context. And as already Gillian mentioned, the work of Health Nexus is taking place within the context of health promotion and health equity. And our evaluation, as our evaluation work is unfolding within such context, it is necessary that evaluation process itself is aligned with the key principles of health promotion, which are, as you can see, I'm just trying to activate the pointer as we practiced before. Okay, yeah, I think I got it. So again, our process is aligned with the key principles of health promotion, which are community participation, interdisciplinary action, empowerment, and a holistic or socio-ecological approach to framing health. Our approach to evaluation and subsequent adaptation of the questionnaire were guided by these principles. So within these key guiding principles for evaluation in health promotion, we chose developmental, participatory approach to evaluation. And we adapted the tool to align it with such an approach. So I suggest look at this as a few nesting dolls. The set of dolls where one fits another. So methods and tools fit an evaluation approach, which also fits a broader health promotion context. That would be the largest doll in a set. Developmental approach to evaluation ensures that the tools we use, they not only support the goals of our evaluation, but they also support partners in relation to achieving their partnership-specific goals. And participatory aspect of the process ensures that evaluation process supports collective knowledge production to support action. Reflective practice development in this whole process is both means and ends for developmental participatory evaluation. And adaptation of the tool allowed us to support reflective practice development or praxis with participating partnerships. And just a refresher and a reminder that praxis is a concept that was originally developed by a Brazilian adult educator, academic, and social justice activist, Paulo Freire. And praxis is part of conscientization practice, a term also coined by Freire, to signify the process through which individuals situate their personal experiences in larger social structures, identify common ground, and work collectively towards desired system change. So that pretty much describes the context of the projects that we support that work to advance gender equity, to advance women's participation in political action. So here's the actual adaptation of the tool that we named as Partnership Assessment Wheel. Our adaptation was prompted by the suggestions on how to use the tool in the original version to answer the questionnaire individually and then compile all the responses and discuss them together. So this is how we adapted the tool to facilitate that collective discussion part and also participatory data analysis. Jillian and Angel already spoke about the specific requirements and objectives for effective action and partnership outlined in the original questionnaire, so I will not be covering them here in details. I will just explain how we laid them out in this tool. So we allowed the 6 requirements as a wheel, as a wheel with 6 segments. And each segment of the wheel relates to one of the 6 requirements to facilitate partners' reflection on different aspects of partners' participation in a partnership that have an impact on them working together, that have an impact on the quality of their action. So I want to focus your attention here that the questions in a gray font inside the segments were not actually the questions that participants were actually answering. So these questions are for the introductory purpose only, to introduce and explain the tool to the participants with whom we facilitated the application of this tool. So participants were actually answering the questions outside of each segment that were adapted from the original questionnaire. So here is also a little bit of the history of this wheel in relation to other wheels, because we did not exactly invent the wheel at Health Nexus. So this wheel is related to other holistic models of knowledge development that build on dialogue and multiple perspectives, such as medicine wheel and indigenous ways of knowing. Also, Socratic method, grounded in a dialogue for the process of mutual enlightenment and knowledge creation. Then there is also dialectical thinking that refers to the ability to view the issues from multiple perspectives, with the goal to arrive to the most reasonable solution, which is somewhere in the middle. And also, most recently, action reflection, or the spiral of learning, that is foundation of popular education methods developed by Paulo Freire and other practitioners and academics in adult education. And then there is also symbolic quality of the wheel. It's the symbolism of the wheel is for the wheel to keep its functionality, to keep rolling forward, it needs all the segments to be equally well developed. Because what happens when some are missing or underdeveloped or undeveloped altogether, then at the very least we will have a bumpy ride, or the wheel will fall apart. And the same applies to partnerships. So the partnership assessment wheel not only provides a framework for assessment, but I think most importantly, it provides a framework for reflection on what needs to be done to develop stronger, more effective partnership, where all 6 requirements are well developed. So I'm now going to walk you through the process, through the steps of the process for a reflective participatory dialogue with the partnership assessment wheel. So there are 3 steps: individual reflection, story sharing, and collective reflection. For the individual reflection part, each participant received a copy of the partnership assessment wheel template. And then each participant, and I also have to explain that we had at least one representative from an organization that participates in a partnership. So in some, let's refer them as focus groups. So in some focus groups we had up to 4 or 5 participants, and in some we had more. So all participants were invited to assess each segment of the wheel first individually by answering the question outside each segment. And when answering that question, they were asked to use color coding sticky dots according to the suggested color code. So using green color when the answer is yes, yellow when it's somewhat or sometimes, a red dot when the answer was no, straightforward no, and the blue dots reserved for those situations when the respondent was not able to provide input due to the lack of information or maybe insufficient involvement with the project at that stage. You may also have noticed now that our wheel has two circles, one inner circle in the middle, and then there's also an extended circle. So this was dictated by the specifics of the partnerships that we are supporting. In the partnerships that we work with, there are two types of partners, excuse me, or actors, as we refer them in the tool. So we have core partners, and this is the inner circle. This is the stable group of organizations that came together to pursue the project from the beginning. And then there is also this extended circle that includes other engaged actors, other organizations, agencies, and maybe smaller community groups that got involved during actual project implementation stage. So this aspect, the two circles, may not be needed for all partnerships. This is just, a particular feature of this tool, of this adaptation, that was dictated by the context of the partnerships we support. So the next step of the process is story sharing. In addition to assessing each segment, participants were also invited to think about the stories that illustrate their dots and give an example explaining why they responded with a particular color to the segment. And they were asked to provide one example for a green dot, just any green dot on the wheel, and also one example of a yellow or a red dot. And we also asked participants to record those examples again on sticky notes of respective color. So by now you may have guessed that for this activity you will need plenty of color-coding sticky dots and also plenty of color-coded sticky papers, sticky notes. So that brought us to a collective reflection. We, as a facilitators, we then collected all the individual reflection sheets and we transferred those to a large copy of the partnership assessment wheel, so we had a poster-sized copy. And we transferred all the dots to facilitate this collective at-a-glance analysis. So here, these are the examples of the questions that we posed for the collective reflection. We reflected on the green areas first, on those areas where the green dots dominate, and we shared stories that represent those green dots or the stories behind the dots. And then we discussed areas with yellow or, green, or red dots prevailing, and also the areas that showed lack of a consensus, lack of convergence. For example, on this, this is a fictional wheel, by the way, it doesn't present any actual data. We created it for the presentation purposes. So one of the examples of lack of consensus could be this particular segment of the wheel with multicolored dots. Angel and Gillian spoke about earlier, partnerships benefit from identifying convergences between the actors as well as the controversies that may divide them. So this is what this collective at-a-glance analysis, collective reflection with the wheel does. It helps make those convergences and controversies visible. And it provides valuable points for collective discussion, for collective reflection, and potential focused action in relation to strengthening the partnership. And when reflecting during this process of collective reflection, it is important to emphasize the strengths of the partnerships, really those areas with the green dots, and to discuss factors behind them. Identify where factors that are external or internal to partnership may be affecting the partnership's capacity to fulfill the requirements, may be impacting it in a positive or in some cases not so positive way. And also during this activity, we found that it is important to continuously remind participants that red and yellow are not the signs of failure. They only make some of our limitations visible. they can help us identify conditions, both external and internal, that enable or impede effective and equitable action and partnership. And also, this is an assessment at a given point in time, which means today with these people, and it's highly context-dependent. So I just want to emphasize that this is not the purpose of this adaptation. The purpose of partnership assessment wheel is not for partnership performance measurement. It is for assessment and reflection on partnership conditions, as well as power distribution among different partners. And finally, we also use the tool to assist partners to collectively identify a focus for strengthening their partnership. So for that, we invited participants to select a segment on the wheel that both called for their attention and also was doable, manageable within the project's time frame, and considering the resources and supports available, including but not limited to those from Health Nexus. And here are the guidelines for the application of the tool and facilitation tips that we came up with, again, upon reflecting on our experiences of implementing this tool. First of all, develop familiarity with the context of a partnership with which you are planning to implement this adapted version of the tool. Know the setting and partners well, who they are, where they are located in terms of geographical and social location, what successes and challenges they've experienced together. So know the partners well. As an evaluator, as a researcher, I wouldn't be able to simply parachute with this tool into to the partnership that I have no knowledge of. So making and strengthening connections and knowledge of the partnership context is very important here. Maintain explicit focus on reflective practice development and dialogue. Again, it's not a performance measurement. Explain that this is not for the purpose of measuring partners' progress and performance, but to help them, first of all, to get grounded in their partnership and understand better what are the enablers and constraints for their effective action and partnership. And ensure that there is a shared commitment between facilitators and participants to equalize power among partners. And developing an awareness that one may hold more power than the others is usually the first necessary step towards the dialogue on what can be done to share it. So practice intersectionality by naming and acknowledging intersecting categories of privilege and oppression, as well as the power dynamics that produce them, including those that may be specific to partnership, to this particular partnership. Implement this activity in the spirit of curiosity and collaborative inquiry into deeper truths. Important to affirm and celebrate partners' collective strengths before moving into this activity. Focus on sharing stories rather than counting the dots. And again, I said that, but I'm going to repeat, clarify with participants that the dots are not indicators, are not simply indicators of success or failure. They are markers that signify challenges and strengths at a given point in time, and the collective picture provide a snapshot of a particular moment in the life of a partnership that is context dependent. And to conclude, I would like to illustrate, quite literally, the importance of equitable action and partnership, the importance of equalizing or sharing power. In a partnership, just like in a pond, we have many partners, or many fish, big and small. And let's say that there is something in the water that makes us compete. There is a certain set of mind and mentality that enforces competition, eat or get eaten mentality. And collectively as a society, as a sector perhaps, we've been schooled to work in conditions that promote competition rather than partnership. And what happens when fish of different size and power come together and they're used to competition? The quality of participation of smaller partners may suffer when partners do not share power equitably. And in such environment, ultimately, the bigger fish wins, using other fish to fulfill its goals. As Angel mentioned earlier, the quality of action suffers when bigger partners use smaller partners to fulfill bigger partners' goals, rather than common goal for the partnership. So, to swim happily in a pond, we want to unlearn competitive behaviors and practices and collectively move to conditions that foster good partnership work to achieve empowering participation for all partners. Angel and Gillian noted earlier that with the equalization of power relationships, all actors can combine their knowledge, practices, and resources to produce more appropriate options for action, more relevant options for action. And it means that even the smallest fish can swim happily in a pond to participate equitably in partnership. And the smallest fish in the context of the partnership work in the context of health promotion, of public health, gender equity, the smallest fish are usually community groups, grassroots groups. So we want to create those conditions that support the participation of even the smallest fish. And I strongly believe that participatory dialogue that supports reflective practice development with the focus on equity and justice is of an absolute importance in the context of health promotion and public health work. And that's it from me for now. This is my example, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. That's a really great analogy, and thank you for sharing your experience with the partnership assessment wheel that you have been working on and working with. And I'd also like to thank Angel and Gillian, too, for a wonderful presentation and an overview of the tool itself and how it was developed and translated. So that's really, really great. Thank you so much. So we have reached the point in the webinar where we will be opening it up for questions. So we do have a few questions that have come through, but please post any questions or comments that you may have or that come up for our presenters in the chat box, and I can relay them to our presenters. I guess to get started, I don't know, Jean and Gillian, did you want to try using the webcam function?
Yeah, you know, I was suggesting, I was like, oh, there's these boxes here for webcams, but now I can't figure out how to turn mine on. So we'll just try and be dynamic in our responses, and not this time. Well, I guess we'll try for it next time. We'll practice with the webcam.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess unfortunately, we don't have that technology at all here, so on this computer. So that sounds great. So I think moving to our first question from Shauna, we're just she's wondering, is there an optimal number of people that are needed or that you would suggest to have when using the tool? Is there a maximum number that this tool can be used with?
Yeah. So regularly there is no more than 20-25 participants in a partnership. So you can use a collective exercise if the people are comfortable with that, or you can use the quantitative data. You can each one complete the questionnaire, and after you compile the data and you share the result all together. So you have some option to use the questionnaire depending of the number of participants you have.
Great, that's great, that's wonderful. Good to see that it is so versatile. And the next question that we have here is we were wondering if you could comment on using this tool in different formats or settings. So, for example, if you've had experience using it in a survey format versus a focus group or a working group, I guess similar to the types of ways that you can use this tool that you were just discussing.
Angèle, she's asking, or that question was asking about just some of the insights of using just the questionnaire or going straight to the focus group. I think maybe we could speak about what we shared earlier, those bar charts. That was from a case study, because I read that. So it was used in a questionnaire, and then the results were analyzed and then presented to the group for dialogue. And I believe it even happened in a couple of partnerships. They were all around school-based partnerships. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So really, I mean, and from my work, because I work with Julia on the team that does the work that she has been sharing about, I would say, like, you know, if you need to get into the qualitative at some point, right, in order for the partnership to be able to do something with the results, because it is a self-evaluation tool. So, you know, if we ask the partners, what do you want to why do you want to do this evaluation, I would suspect they want to do it because they want to either open up some conversation that it's been hard to have, or just to identify maybe there's areas that they need to talk about that they haven't, because everyone wants to be using their time together the most effective as possible. So that piece of the dialogue is key to the use of the tool. Am I right, Angèle, that like, you would not only use the questionnaire and then circulate the results and then move on with your regular agenda?
And the coordinator of the exercise should have in mind that partners may be not ready for some question now, and they wish to keep some aspect maybe related to power. It's the most sensitive of all questions. So maybe the coordinator of the exercise can keep some questions for to be discussed another time when partners will be ready for that. It is a work in progress with this tool.
And if I may add also, the value of this tool, as I see it, as I experienced it, is not only in the quantitative information it provides, but it's the quantitative and the qualitative data together. And that's why I emphasized a few times when sharing the partnership assessment wheel that the point is not to count the dots, but also get the stories behind the dots. And I would also say that about the questionnaire itself. So it's not only, it's the quantity attached to that qualitative information or vice versa.
I want to jump in, but then I know we have other questions. But because we do work facilitating partnership dialogues, and there is a sensitivity that we have to have around power so that people who might be feeling marginalized in the partnership, it can be like, is it safe for them to talk about these things in the full group? Techniques that I've used in the past, you know, if you had a group of 25 people and you had these results from the individual questionnaires being completed, I would design a dialogue where the first step would be to have people in what I call affinity groups. So you would have the community people sit together and look at the results and talk about them. And you'd have the agency people, maybe the community service organizations, and then maybe the government agency people. So they would each have 20 minutes to look at the results at a table and sort of collectively articulate some thoughts about those results and then share them. And then you would just move right away to the larger group. But that creates a participatory and also an equalizing, an inclusive and anti-oppressive space for those people to start speaking about something that might not have been safe for them if I individually completed the questionnaire and then I couldn't necessarily speak to that group of 20 people. But if I've had a chance to talk among peers and we come to a consensus about what that means and what the messaging is, that can be a helpful process of a way to move forward with the difficult things. And some of them are easier and some of them are more difficult. And the spirit of doing that, you know, is also key, of course.
Yeah, I would like to come back on the quantitative and qualitative aspect of the tool to say that if you have a score, a quantitative score, there is qualitative data behind the score, and often the score comes from different events that people have in mind when they answer the question. So it is important when there is a different point of view, when the score is not the same or is not shared, the same score is not shared between all partners. So then, at that moment, it is interesting to share the events that conduct people to score A, B, or C, and maybe not the same events. And because in a partnership there is good moments and less good moments, and maybe someone are thinking about bad moments, and so is it clear what I say?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. That was very helpful. Thank you for sharing your insights there. We have another question that is just asking about the timing of when you would be using this type of tool. So what is the best timing to use this tool in a partnership, and what needs to have happened before you use the tool?
Yeah. The tool is useful when a partnership is engaged in the work together, in the working together. At the beginning, it's not time to use that because the tool is useful if you do an evaluation of your functioning. So you need to have a history. Mm-hmm. Maybe, Gillian, you have an experience with that.
I'm sorry, I was answering a chat.
Okay.
So what did you want me to speak to?
You were talking about, before, you were talking about
oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you use the tool at the beginning of a partnership. And
yeah, we did share the tool. We didn't try to fully use it, but we shared it and just sort of asked people which are the key, just with the 6 requirements, which are the key areas, what would you be interested in, considering and looking at? And right away, because it was early in the partnership, they were looking at the first condition of who's participating, who's around the table, right? So you could see that at that point, that was their primary preoccupation, because as we all know, it's a lot of work. But I would say it's so helpful, and I think that the National Collaborating Center, in your description of the tool, I really appreciate it. In fact, I've reused the language. It helps with, it's there for self-evaluation. It also teaches us as practitioners, what's important in our work developing and supporting partnerships. So for yourselves as practitioners, and then just having it available at the moment where you might want to be sharing with a colleague or a potential partner, well, we think it's important that we look for resources and some finances so you can be involved in all our meetings, so that you can really be a part of strategic decisions from the get-go. So you can use it in that way. As I said at the very beginning, like we've shared some ways of using this tool today, and it was designed as a self-evaluation tool, but as someone who works in the field of partnership in many ways, like to me, it's an accessible line to really valuable evidence about what works for equitable and effective partnerships. So I do use it in different ways, and I think you could find ways to use it at the beginning. But in the way that we've talked about using it thoroughly, I think, at least 6 months into a partnership, if not a year into it.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree from my perspective of using the adapted version of the tool. We used it with the partners in their 2nd year, and I don't think we could have used it in the 1st year. As I said, it's important also to have a knowledge and connections, familiarity with the partnership for the researcher or evaluator who brings it into the partnership.
Thank thank you everyone for your comments. I'm sorry, did you have an additional?
May I add some point on this question? The six requirements are currently useful in a partnership. We cannot say that the first one, according to participation,
Continue your sentence.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I want to say that 6 conditions are currently useful, and we cannot say that participation is now okay, because we checked that last year and now it's okay, but the composition of a partnership needs always to be renewed to face issue. So yeah, it was the idea that all the 6 conditions are actually really useful every time.
Yeah, partnerships are not static, you know, they change, their composition change, and also the context around them, around their, the context of their work changes as well. So yeah, as I also mentioned, it's the assessment, a snapshot of that at given point in time.
Thank you, Julia. It was really the idea what I wanted to say.
That's why we're working together.
Thank you, Angela.
That's wonderful. So I think we have a few more questions and a little bit more time. So I will keep moving ahead, and hopefully we can get to all of them. But I hear and I know that you're also available and interested in hearing people's comments and questions post-webinar, and there is also an opportunity tomorrow as well to participate in the French language of this webinar. So our next question is just asking, are there any special considerations for using the tool with different types of partnerships? So, for example, perhaps intersectoral partnerships versus more focused single sector partnerships.
I understand. Est-ce que tu as compris? I'm just going to translate into French. Est-ce qu'il y a des critères pour utiliser avec les partenariats différents, par exemple les partenariats intersectoriels par rapport aux partenariats parmi un seul secteur?
We can make adjustment in the item, such as when we talk about equalization of power, we talk about community organization, or if you are in intersectoral partnership, we can have a new formulation such as partner with less power instead of community group. We can adjust this tool for intersectoral partnership, yeah.
Wonderful, great, thank you. So our next question is looking at, after using the self-evaluation tool and perhaps identifying areas for possible improvement, do you know of any, or have you heard of any related tools or methods to help address some of these areas?
Hi, it's Jillian. I'll respond to that. So very much so at Help Nexus, it's our area of work, one of our main areas of work. So on our website, we have a page under the partnership support page, and there's lots of resources on there, and I think almost all of them are available in English and French. And I'm going to put a link here in the chat box to a particular kind of overarching one we have on partnerships. It's called Partnership Essentials. So it does some introductory pieces and talks about building partnerships and equity in partnerships, and then it introduces a framework that we've used a lot in, and we also have webinar recordings. You can look at the 6 activities for successful partnership. The fact that there's 6 has nothing to do with the 6 requirements in this tool. But these are activities that you'll be very familiar with, like bringing on new partners, understanding each other, you know, putting together plans, working together, evaluating, you know. The only thing that I would say is parallel to the evaluation tool is the fact that, you know, there's 6, and it's important to not think that you're going through a number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are activities that good partnerships are doing all the time, but I mean, they focus on different areas at different times more and others less so. But partnerships that really have synergy, that synergy that the research talks about, you see that when they're doing planning, they're also really listening to each other's different perspectives as they're doing planning. So they're building shared understanding and et cetera. So I think starting with this one that I'm going to put on the chat box and then going to the website, you'll be able to find different ways of responding to something that comes up in the self-evaluation. Thank you.
That's really great, and thank you for sharing that. And I will maybe take the time to mention now that we did put together you put together a document with links and supplementary material that would be relevant to all aspects of using the partnership tool. And we will be making sure that that's posted on our SlideShare account and linked to the recording as well for anybody who would like to access. And we can also make sure that the link that you share as well in the chat box will be included in that document as well. So thank you for that. I think one more quick question is specific for Julia and your adaptation of the partnership wheel. Is that available for use outside of Health Nexus?
We are currently finalizing a published version of the adaptation of the tool, and Gillian, presently it's available on request. I cannot answer right now when we will be able to upload it on the website. Gillian, could you perhaps address this?
You're asking me a work plan question. I'm not prepared for that one. But just to say that I did put Julia's email in the chat box, and it's in the resource that you'll get after the webinar. And so just feel free to email her directly and request that. We've already put a little we put a credit on it. It's just that we're not like officially publishing it, but we are willing to circulate it, because if you're ready to use it now, we'd love to share
and we will happily share, yes, and I will also answer, any questions you may have for us. And Gillian and I will discuss how we can proceed with the official publication on the website. Thank you, Gillian.
Wonderful. That's great to hear. So we do have a few minutes, and if anybody does have any additional questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box. But we will continue with our last few polling questions of the day. So thank you to those who are still tuned in. And we'd like to ask if you feel that this tool could be useful in your own practice. And with the projects and partners that you're working with today. So please choose your answers from the list, and don't forget to hit the submit button at the bottom. And I will leave this up for a few seconds as you have a chance to submit. But overall, we're seeing that people are mostly finding that this will be very useful in their work. So that's really great to see. As well, we'd like to let you know that your feedback is very important to us, and we will be posting a link in our chat section to a short survey on today's webinar. So please, if you have a chance, take a few moments to complete this survey and provide any feedback you have on this tool or on our Spotlight series as a whole. We really welcome any feedback, and we really use this information to help inform our webinar series. And also to select methods and tools to feature in future sessions that are relevant to our audience. So again, the link will just be posted in the chat section, and we encourage you, if you have some time, to go and answer a few quick questions. So we do have one more polling question before we wrap up. And this one is a little different in that you can actually select multiple responses or select all that apply. And we'd like to ask what your next steps might be after learning about the tool today. So after this presentation or in the next few days, do you plan on accessing the tool itself or reading the summary of the tool on the Registry of Methods and Tools? Are you considering using this tool in your own practice, or do you plan on telling a colleague today about what you've learned in the presentation? So I will leave that open as we move on, and thank you to those who respond. And it does seem that people are most certainly looking forward to reading more about the tool, sharing the tool with their colleagues, and using it in their own work as well. All right, so we are at time, but I would like to let you know that we do host a number of other webinar series. And for more information on these series or to sign up for upcoming sessions, you can visit the link posted in the chat section, which will go to our webinar page on our website. So with that, I did want to give a very big thank you to all of our presenters today, as well as to everybody who joined in for the webinar. I will pass it on to our presenters for any final remarks before we sign off. So Angèle, Jillian, or Julia, do you have any final words?
Thank you so much for the smooth facilitation of the process behind the scenes. It's always such a substantial amount of work to put together a webinar, so I really appreciate National Collaborating Center for Method and Tools support. Thank you.
Thank you, it's Jillian, and yeah, it's been a pleasure ever since the beginning of working with Angèle on this tool, and Julia and I working together goes even further back. So, and then working with Kate and Kirsten at the Collaborating Center. Thank you all for being part of this, and we all look forward to our future work in this area.
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and I hope everybody has a lovely afternoon.
Thank you.